I want you to picture a dinner party. But I don't want you to picture, a nice orderly table with matching silverware and polite conversation about the weather or the stock market. I want you to imagine a table where the guests are. Well, they're fundamentally wrong.
Wrong how? Like they're using the salad fork for the entree. Or wrong like they're shouting conspiracy theories.
No, much, much worse. Wrong in the sense that they probably shouldn't exist. At the head of the table, you have a wooden puppet. And he's not just sitting there. He is actively dismantling the laws of logic just by opening his mouth.
Okay.
Every single sentence he speaks threatens to crash the universe's entire operating system.
So we have a logic-breaking puppet. Who's he sitting next to? I'm almost afraid to ask.
He is sitting next to a pony, a very specific, very large pony named Rosabelle. And across from them is a woman named Olga, who is physically stuck fused, really inside a newsstand kiosk.
Right.
And while the puppet is breaking logic, these two,
Okay.
they're breaking something else entirely. They are breaking time.
You were setting a very strange scene, but I think I know exactly where we're going with this. We're doing a double feature today.
We are. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at bodies that break the rules. We have a stack of sources that, if you just looked at them separately, would make absolutely no sense together. On one side of my desk, I have a stack of papers on formal logic, paradoxes, and a Wikipedia entry about a specific problem involving Pinocchio.
And on the other side?
On the other side, we have a 2021 issue of Analyze, Journal of Gender and Feminist Studies, and specifically an article by Åsa Warnfist and Mia Österlund that looks at something called fat temporality in European picture books.
It really sounds like a collision of worlds. You have this high concept, almost abstract philosophy and logic puzzles colliding with children's literature and body politics.
It is.
But the mission here, I take it, is to find the thread that actually connects them.
Exactly. Our mission today is to understand how these stories use impossible bodies, whether they are made of pine wood or flesh and blood, to challenge our deepest concepts of truth, reality, and even time itself.
It's a fascinating pairing because both topics are fundamentally about rules. The Pinocchio paradox, it deals with the hard binary rules of logic, true versus false, simple.
Right.
The picture books, on the other hand, deal with social rules, normative versus non-normative, thin versus fat, fast versus slow. They're fuzzier rules, but they're just as powerful.
So we are going to find out what happens when a puppet hacks the very concept of truth, and what happens when a pony just decides that the standard timeline of life doesn't really apply to her.
And we should probably mention, the sources for the logic side of things aren't just dry academic papers. We have some really fun stuff from a philosophy forum where you have people, seriously arguing about the velocity of a nose.
My favorite part of the research, hands down. So let's not waste any more time. Let's start with the puppet.
The Pinocchio paradox. Let's do it.
Now, when people think of paradoxes, they usually picture some ancient Greek guy in a toga standing on a rock, stroking his beard, and just completely confusing his disciples.
Zeno or Epimenides, the classics, usually involving, tortoises or cretins or something like that.
Right, exactly. But the Pinocchio paradox wasn't discovered in ancient Greece. It was proposed in February 2001.
So recent.
Incredibly recent. And it wasn't proposed by some tenured professor at Oxford. It was invented by an 11-year-old girl.
I absolutely love this origin story. It's Veronique Eldridge Smith.
Veronique Eldridge Smith. Now, to be fair to the tenured professors of the world, she did have a bit of a leg up. Her father is Peter Eldridge Smith, who is a specialist in the philosophy of logic.
Rich, just imagine that dinner table conversation. Could you pass the peas? And also, please define the nature of truth predicates for me.
Exactly. So the story goes that Peter was explaining the classic liar paradox to his children.
Okay, for anyone who hasn't had their coffee yet this morning, let's just quickly refresh the liar paradox, because it's really the foundation for everything we're about to talk about.
Good idea. The classic version is a sentence like, "This sentence is false."
Right. It's so deceptively simple.
If the sentence is true, well, then it says it's false, so it must be false. But if it's false, then it's true that it's false, which makes the original statement true.
And you just spiral forever. It's a semantic loop. It's language literally eating itself.
Like a snake eating its own tail.
Exactly. There is no external reference point. It's just the words fighting with their own definition. A purely abstract problem.
So Peter explains this to his kids, and he asks them to come up with their own versions. He wants to see if they grasp the concept of, self-reference. And Veronique, Being 11 years old and probably knowing the Disney movie a lot better than she knows Aristotle, she says. Pinocchio says, my nose will be grow.
And it seems so simple. My nose will be growing. But her father, Peter Eldridge Smith, he recognized immediately that she had done something really quite profound.
Yeah.
She hadn't just repeated the liar paradox, she'd evolved it. She took it to the next level.
Because it involves a physical object, a
Yeah.
real thing in the world.
Precisely. The classic liar paradox is purely semantic. It's words about words. This sentence is false. There is no physical reality attached to that statement. Nothing in the real world changes based on whether it's true or false.
It's a thought experiment.
It is. But Pinocchio, that connects a truth value. Is he lying or not? To a physical, tangible consequence, the nose growing. It bridges the gap between language and reality.
So let's walk through the mechanics of this loop, because I want to make sure everyone listening feels the same kind of headache I felt when I first read this. It's a very specific kind of ache right behind the eyes.
Let's do it. We need to establish the ground rules of the simulation first.
Yeah.
The laws of this particular universe.
Okay. The rules of the Pinocchio universe are crystal clear. The Blue Fairy set them up. Rule 1. If Pinocchio tells a lie, his nose grows.
Simple enough.
Rule 2. If Pinocchio tells the truth, his nose does not grow, it stays the same.
Okay, a very clean binary system. Input, lie, output, growth. Input, truth.
Mm.
Output, stasis. No ambiguity there.
So Pinocchio stands up in front of everyone and says, my nose grows now. Let's run the simulation. Scenario A, he is telling the truth.
Okay, let's assume for a moment he is telling the truth. If the sentence, my nose grows now, is true, then it must be a fact that his nose is, at this very moment, growing. That is simply the definition of the sentence being true.
Right.
However, if we look at the rules of the magic, his nose only grows when he lies. So if he is telling the truth, his nose should, by definition, stay the same size.
So we have a contradiction immediately.
Yeah.
The sentence itself says it's growing, which requires it to be true, but the rules of his world say it shouldn't grow because he's being honest.
Correct. The physical reality required by the magic contradicts the physical reality described by the sentence. If his nose grows, he must have told the truth. But if he told the truth, his nose shouldn't grow. It's an impossible condition.
Okay, so scenario A is a bust. The universe just can't handle scenario A. Let's try scenario B. He is lying. The sentence, my nose grows now, is false.
Okay, let's walk that path. If the statement is false, that means his nose is not growing. That's what false means here. The event he is describing is simply not happening.
Correct. It's a lie.
But because he just told a lie, he stated something that was false, the magic spell has to activate. The rule is ironclad. If lie, then growth. So his nose must grow.
But wait, if the nose grows?
Then the statement, my nose grows now, suddenly becomes factually true.
And if it's true, then he didn't lie in the first place.
And if he didn't lie, the nose shouldn't be growing.
Which means the statement was false, which means he did lie.
And round and round and round we go. It's an infinite loop of cause and effect.
It's actually, I think, worse than the this sentence is false paradox because it directly involves causality. It's like he's hacking the physics of his own world. He's found a command that forces the magic to malfunction.
He has. It's what logicians might call a dialetheia, which is a true contradiction, or at least potentially one. But before we get to the really heavy philosophy, we have to look at how people desperately tried to solve this. Because when this was published, and especially when it hit the internet forums, people did not like being stuck in this loop.
Oh, absolutely not.
They wanted a way out, an escape hatch.
Oh, absolutely. We have this amazing forum discussion in our sources. I mean, pages and pages of very smart people trying to outsmart an imaginary puppet. It's just delightful. They are treating this with the seriousness of a bomb defusal squad.
As they should. Logic is serious business. You can't just let a puppet break it.
One of the first and most common arguments that popped up immediately is what we can call the tense argument.
Right. This is the will be argument. It focuses on the wording.
Veronique's original phrasing, the one she told her dad, was, my nose will be growing. Future tense.
So, a philosopher named William F. Vallicella, he jumped on this immediately. He argued that you can't really lie about the future in this specific way. You can only make a prediction.
Like a weather forecast. If I stand here and say, it will rain tomorrow, and then it's sunny, I didn't lie. I was just wrong. I'm a bad meteorologist, not a perjurer.
Exactly. A lie, by most philosophical definitions, requires the intent to deceive regarding a known truth. Vallicella uses this great analogy with Blood pressure.
Okay, walk us through the blood pressure example.
If I sit here right now and say tomorrow at exactly 8:30 a.m. my systolic blood pressure will be 130, I am making a claim about a future physical state of my body.
A very specific claim.
Very. Now tomorrow comes, I put on the cuff at 8 a.m. and it's actually 120. Was I lying yesterday when I made the statement?
No, you just made a bad guess about your own body. You were mistaken. There was no deceit.
Precisely. Being mistaken isn't the same as lying. So Vallicella argues that Pinocchio is just making a prediction. My nose will grow. If it doesn't grow, well, he made a false prediction, not a lie. Since it's not a lie, the magic doesn't trigger. The nose stays small, case closed.
See, that's clean.
The paradox dissolves into a simple error of judgment.
I don't buy that, and neither did the people in the forum. It feels, I don't know, like a cop-out.
Why doesn't it sit right with you? What's the problem with it?
Because Pinocchio isn't a weatherman guessing at the clouds, and he's not guessing about his blood pressure. He knows the rules. He knows the mechanism. He has the user manual for his own face. He's lived this.
That is exactly the counter-argument the forum users made. Pinocchio has what you could call inductive reasoning.
Yeah.
He has lived with this curse. He has observed, maybe 100 times before, that lie equals growth. So when he makes that statement, he isn't passively predicting, he is actively trying to trigger the mechanism.
It's like if I hold a ball in the air and say, this ball will drop to the floor when I let go. I'm not guessing. I know gravity exists. I'm stating a causal relationship I have absolute confidence in.
Right. And the forum users pointed out that the speaker's intent matters. If Pinocchio believes it will grow because he thinks he set up a perfect lie, and he says it, he's actually telling what he believes is the truth. But if he believes it won't grow and he says it will, he's lying. The brilliance of the paradox is that he is setting up a condition where the outcome is entirely dependent on the veracity of the statement itself.
He is hacking the system. He's using the input to force the output to crash. He's found the one command the system can't process.
This is what leads to the indexical argument, the whole idea of the word now.
Right, because if will be is too vague and gives us this wiggle room for prediction.
You can just tighten the screws.
Exactly. To avoid that gap where prediction might just be wrong, the paradox becomes much, much tighter if Pinocchio says, my nose is growing now.
Right now, as I speak. The duration of the utterance itself.
That completely removes the prediction element. It makes it a statement of current, observable fact. And that's where the loop gets really, really tight. There is no tomorrow to wait for to see if you are right. The contradiction is instantaneous.
So the tense argument is a good try, but it doesn't really save us from the core problem.
So if that doesn't save us, what about the metaphysical argument? This comes from Peter Eldridge Smith himself, Veroning's dad.
This is a bit more abstract, but I think it's a really fascinating way to view fiction and world building. Eldridge Smith argues that the paradox proves that Pinocchio's world is, quote, metaphysically impossible.
In other words, the universe of Pinocchio is just broken. It's a bad design. The code has a fatal flaw.
Essentially, yes. He uses the concept of possible worlds from logic. So we can imagine a world with flying horses. That's logically possible. There's no inherent contradiction in a horse having wings. It's just biologically unlikely here on Earth. We can imagine a world where magic exists. Logically possible.
Sure, I can picture that.
But we cannot, under any circumstances, imagine a world where a square is also a circle. That is logically impossible. It contradicts its own definition. A thing cannot be A and not A.
And he thinks the Pinocchio paradox is a square circle.
He argues that you cannot have a world with the rule nose grows if and only if untruth, and then allow a puppet in that world the free will to say, my nose grows now. Those two conditions are mutually exclusive. They create a logic bomb.
It's like a computer program where two lines of code directly contradict each other.
Exactly. If you build a world with those rules and that puppet speaks that sentence, the world simply ceases to be logical. It breaks.
He compares it to another old paradox, Buridan's Bridge. I had never heard of this before, but it's a great little story. It sounds like the setup for a generic fantasy quest.
It's an ancient sophism, yeah. It dates back to the medieval philosophers, though you can find variants that go back even further. Imagine Socrates is trying to cross a bridge, and Plato is standing in the middle, guarding it.
A philosophical standoff. The two heavyweights of Athens.
Plato, being a bit of a tyrant in this story, says, Socrates, I will let you cross this bridge if and only if the first thing you say is true. But if you speak falsely, I will throw you in the river below.
Okay, high stakes. You get a wet toga if you lie.
The Socrates, being Socrates, looks him in the eye and says, you are going to throw me in the river.
Oh, he's such a troll. He really is the original internet troll.
He really is. But just look at Plato's dilemma. He's the one who made the rules. If you throw Socrates in the river, then Socrates told the truth, which means Plato broke his own promise. The rule was, if true, let him cross.
But if he lets him cross,
Then Socrates lied, because he said, you will throw me in. But he wasn't thrown in. So according to the rules, Plato should have thrown him in for lying.
it's the exact same structure. The statement forces the authority figure, Plato or the Blue Fairy, into a position where they cannot follow their own rules without contradicting them.
Exactly. Elder Smith says that in a truly logical world, Socrates simply cannot cross that bridge. The scenario forces a collapse. Either the bridge shouldn't exist, or the rules are invalid, or Socrates is somehow prevented from speaking that sentence. The system crashes.
But there is another view, one that doesn't see a crash, one that sort of embraces the chaos. Dialetheism.
Dialetheism. This is the view that there can be true contradictions. It's a pretty radical idea in logic.
Most of us are taught from a very young age the law of non-contradiction. A thing cannot be A and not A at the same time and in the same respect. You can't be dead and alive. You can't be pregnant and not pregnant.
But dialetheists say, well, maybe logic is weirder than that. Maybe there are glitches in reality, or at least in language, where something is both true and false at the same time.
A forum user named Soylent brought this up in our source material.
Soylent, a great, if slightly unsettling screen name.
Let's hope he's not made of people.
Let's hope. Soylent argues that our brains desperately want to collapse the waveform. We want the nose to either grow or not grow. We crave that binary resolution. That's how we're wired. But in a fictional world, or maybe even in our own world at the quantum level, maybe the contradiction just is.
It's Schrodinger's nose.
It is. It exists in a superposition of growing and not growing. The universe doesn't crash. It just accepts the absurdity. The nose is, at that moment, growing AD not growing simultaneously. The statement is both true and false.
I kind of like that. It feels very zen. What is the sound of one nose growing and not growing?
Exactly. Just is. Don't fight it.
But my absolute favorite solution, and this is where we get the real nerd badge out, polish it up, and pin it to our chests, is the mathematical approach. This came from a user on the forum named Andrew.
Ah, yes. Andrew brings calculus into a fairy tale, which is just a magnificent move.
Because why not? If you're going to overthink it, you might as well use calculus.
So, Andrew argues that we are all thinking about growth in the wrong way. We are thinking of it as a binary state, growing versus not growing, like a light switch being on or off.
But biologically, or even just physically, it's not a switch. It's a process.
No, it's not a switch. Physically, growth is a rate of change. It's velocity. It's movement over time.
Velocity of the nose. I love that phrase.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Velocity, as you might remember from physics class, is the derivative of position with respect to time. It's a measure of how fast something's position is changing.
Okay, I'm with you.
So Andrew asks us to look at the exact moment Pinocchio says now. Let's call that time t0. We're freezing the frame at that instant.
Right.
Before he speaks, let's imagine the nose is not growing. Its velocity is 0. Then he utters the sentence, and the magic has to assess the situation. If the statement is false, the nose must start growing. If it's true, it must not. The problem is that the magic is supposed to be instantaneous, which creates what mathematicians call a discontinuity.
A discontinuity, like a sharp break in a line on a graph.
Precisely. Imagine a line on a graph that's perfectly flat, and then at one specific point, it suddenly tries to shoot upwards. Or it's going up and suddenly goes flat. If the nose stops growing at that exact instant, what is its velocity at t by 0?
If I remember my high school calculus, is it 0 or is it undefined?
That's undefined. If you have a graph that creates a sharp corner like a V shape, the derivative, the slope at that exact point doesn't exist. The left-hand limit and the right-hand limit don't match.
So the nose is neither growing nor not growing at that one specific infinitesimal moment.
Mathematically, at that singular point in time, the very question, is it growing, becomes meaningless. It's a void. It's a singularity in the function of the nose's length.
So the solution is, the sentence is grammatically correct, but it's mathematically void. Pinocchio didn't break the universe. He just found a point on the graph where the slope doesn't exist.
Which is a very, very elegant way to tell a puppet to shut up.
Yeah.
Your sentence has no defined derivative, Pinocchio. Please sit down.
I love it. It takes the fairy tale magic and subjects it to the cold, hard logic of Newton and Leibniz. But okay, let's step back for a second. We've gone really deep into the weeds here. Why does any of this matter? Why do we care about this logical loop?
I think it matters because it exposes how fragile our binary thinking really is. We build our entire world on true, false, yes, no, zero, one, guilty, innocent. But Pinocchio shows us that if you arrange those simple bricks in a circle, the whole house can fall down.
He creates a body that cannot be categorized.
A body that breaks the rules of truth. And that, right there, is the perfect bridge to our second topic. Because we are leaving the world of pure logic, of wooden boys and abstract paradoxes. And we are moving to the world of social rules. We are moving to flesh and blood bodies.
And specifically fat bodies.
Yes.
We're looking at this article from Analyze titled The Missing Body by Elsa Warnfest and Mia Osterlund. And this is a hard pivot. We go from a fun, almost playful logic puzzle to something that feels, well, it feels heavier.
It is heavier. Because while Pinocchio is a theoretical problem in a possible world, the missing body is a very real political problem in our world. The authors start with a really stark reality check.
Yeah.
Childhood obesity is a significant demographic reality. WHO statistics show that fat children exist in large numbers. They are in our schools, they are on our playgrounds, they are in our homes, they are a part of society.
But if you walk into a library or a bookstore and you start flipping through the picture books,
They are gone. They are the missing bodies. The authors argue that the fat child is almost entirely absent from contemporary children's literature. It's a strange and conspicuous silence.
it's like a cultural erasure, a choice not to see.
It is, and when they're there, they aren't. Well, they aren't human children.
This is the displacement strategy that the article talks about, right?
Yes. The authors argue that there is such an internalized fear or even a cultural disgust surrounding the fat child's body that authors and illustrators can't bring themselves to depict it on a human peer for the child reader. It's seen as too transgressive, too controversial, so they displace the fatness onto something else.
They put it on animals.
Hippos, bears, pigs, and, as we will see in a moment, ponies.
Or they put it on adults. The fat aunt, the jolly fat baker, the cuddly fat grandmother.
Right, it creates a safe distance, it says to the child reader. This body shape is okay for a funny cartoon bear or for an old lady, but it is not a valid way for you to exist. It essentially tells the child that their body, if it's fat, is not a protagonist's body. It's a sidekick's body or a joke's body.
The authors use a term that really stuck with me, the headless fatty.
That's a really powerful term from fat studies, originally coined by Charlotte Cooper. It refers to how the news media so often depicts fat people during stories about the so-called obesity epidemic. You've seen this footage 1,000 times.
Oh, yeah. It's always a shot of a midsection. Someone walking down the street, and the camera is at waist level. You never see a face. Maybe they're holding a soda or a burger.
Exactly. It decapitates the subject. It turns them into a slab of meat or a statistic or a symptom of a disease. It completely removes their personhood. It makes them an object of study rather than a subject with a story.
And the authors are looking at how picture books handle this kind of framing. Do they chop the head off? Do they hide the body? And that brings us to our two case studies. Two picture books from Europe that are trying to do something very different.
We have the immense Rosabelle, which is Den of Liga Rosabelle in the original Swedish, and the kiosk.
Let's start with Rosabelle. This is a Finnish-Swedish book, and Rosabelle is a pony.
She is. And right away, the book does something pretty radical. It uses the word fat.
Fett in Swedish, not chubby or plump.
Exactly. Usually we get all these euphemisms. Chubby, fluffy, big bone, plump, robust. We dance around the word.
Yeah.
But in the book, Rosabelle's mother tries to use those. She says things like, oh, you're just strong. You have a sturdy build. And Rosabelle corrects her. She says, no, I am fat.
Wow, that's a reclamation. She is taking the weapon, the insult, and just owning it.
It is. And she lives in this stable with other horses who represent what the authors call thin normativity. They have these ridiculous perfect names like Isabel and Pinky Slim.
Pinky Slim, that is delightfully on the nose. I feel like I knew that girl in high school. She was probably head of the cheerleading squad.
We all did. They are the mean girls of the horse world. They were slender, they jump fences elegantly. Rosabelle, on the other hand, knocks the fences down. She takes up too much space. She fails at the performance of being a proper pony.
And this is where we get into the core concept of the article, this idea of fat temporality. This sounds very academic, so let's really break it down. Temporality just means the experience of time.
Right. But time isn't just a clock ticking on the wall. Time is social. It's cultural. The authors talk about chrononormativity. This is the idea that our society has a correct timeline for a life, a prescribed path.
The assembly line of life.
Yes. Think about the milestones we are taught to expect. You are born, you go to school, you grow up, you get a job and become a productive worker. You get married, you have children and reproduce. You work for 40 years, you retire, you die. It is linear, and it is focused on productivity and reproduction. It always moves forward, on schedule.
And the argument here is that fat bodies somehow disrupt this line. How does that work?
They do, in a few ways.
Yeah.
In a very literal sense, they might move slower. They might create drag in the fast-paced flow of capitalism. They might require more rest.
But also, medically and socially, society often views the fat body as having a shortened timeline. The assumption is no future.
Right, the idea that it's a body destined for early decline. Exactly. The fat body is seen as a ticking time bomb, a body that's failing at the project of longevity. So fat temporality is a way of existing that refuses to be rushed. It's a kind of queer time.
Queer time.
It's about stepping out of that straight, narrow line and finding a different rhythm. It involves things like stasis, waiting, taking up space, refusing to progress in the way society demands. It creates a fold or a pause in time where other unexpected things can happen.
So how does Rosabelle the pony do this? How does a pony fold time?
She escapes into her mind. She daydreams. The authors describe her dream sequences as having a burlesque aesthetic.
Burlesque. Is that a combination of girl and burlesque?
Essentially, it's an aesthetic that mixes hyperfemininity, pinks, sparkles, hearts, ribbons, with the grotesque or the excessive. It's girl power gone wild and messy. It's not polite and tidy.
So it's not polite, quiet girliness. It's loud. It's over the top.
It's screaming pink. In her dreams, Rosabelle becomes the rocket of sparks. She wears huge, heart-shaped sunglasses. She imagines a world where her size is her power, where she is the celebrated center of the universe, not the outcast. The authors call this a queer utopia.
A space where the rules don't apply.
Exactly. A space where the rules of the stable, the chrononormativity of the racetrack simply don't apply.
But here's the kicker. In a normal children's book, in a chrononormative story, the ending would be predictable. Rosabelle diets, she exercises, she gets thin, she learns to jump the fence, and she wins the big race.
The biggest loser narrative, the transformation story where the after picture is always thinner.
So does that happen?
No. And that is precisely why this book is so important. Rosabelle does not get thin. She does not win the race. In fact, she doesn't even finish the race.
What does she do instead?
She leaves. She wanders off the track and finds a strange creature outside the fence, a little spiky, hedgehog-like thing that speaks absolute gibberish.
The book shows the creature saying things like "Oriege," just symbols.
Exactly. Just like Pinocchio breaks the logic of truth, this creature breaks the logic of language. It doesn't speak Horse or any other recognizable language, and Rosabelle joins it. She steps outside the fence, outside the stable, outside the entire timeline of performance and competition.
She changes her geography, not her body.
That is the key. She finds a space where her body makes sense. She realizes the problem wasn't her size. The problem was the fence. The container was too small.
Which is the perfect segue to our second book, The Kiosk by Annette Malaché, because this is a story that is entirely about geography and containers.
This book is visually just stunning. Olga is the protagonist. She's an adult woman who works in a newsstand kiosk. But she's been there for so long and she's become so large that she is physically stuck inside it.
She wears the kiosk like a big coat, the book says.
She eats, sleeps, and works in this tiny box. Now think about the visual language here, because the authors point out the cover art is really significant.
Right. The immense Rosabelle had a round cutout on the cover showing her full body.
And roundness suggests something organic, welcoming, infinite, like nature. Olga's book has a sharp, square cutout.
A square suggests a trap, a cage, a prison cell.
Exactly, and through that square on the cover, you only see parts of Olga. She is cramped, she is fragmented, she's contained.
Now, if I just read the synopsis, woman gets too fat to leave her job, I immediately assume this is a tragedy, a cautionary tale. Don't eat too many snacks or you'll become one with your house. It sounds like something out of Roald Dahl, like a punishment.
It sounds like it should be.
Yeah.
But the authors argue the narrative is profoundly body positive. The text never, not once, critiques her size. Olga isn't sad because she is fat. She is sad because she is bored. She's stuck.
She wants to travel. That's her motivation.
She reads travel magazines all day. She dreams of the sunset over the ocean. The conflict in the story is about location, not weight. She doesn't want to be thin. She wants to be elsewhere.
And let's talk about time in this book. Olga represents slow time.
Yes. Outside her kiosk, the city is a blur. Commuters, cars, business people rushing around. That is city time. It's linear, productive, fast. Olga is a static point in the middle of all that chaos. She chats with her customers, she daydreams, she creates a little pocket of fat time. She's the anchor in the storm.
But then the accident
A
happens.
couple boys are playing with a ball, and they accidentally tip the kiosk over onto its side.
And because she is stuck inside, she doesn't fall out. She tips with it.
And suddenly she realizes she can walk. By lying on her side, she could use her feet and hands to move the whole kiosk around. She is a turtle, she can carry her shell.
But then she trips. A dog gets in the way of her new turtle walking, and she falls into the river. The whole kiosk falls in.
And this is the moment of transformation. The authors call it the mermaiding moment.
Mermaiding.
Yeah, they discuss how the fat female body is often compared to marine mammals in culture whales, manatees, or to mermaids.
Mm.
In a negative context, it's an insult, because you could call them lumbering or monstrous. But here, it's liberation.
The kiosk floats, and Olga floats inside it.
She stops fighting gravity. She stops trying to walk on the hard city streets. She surrenders to the buoyancy of the water. She drifts away from the city, out to sea.
This is fat temporality in its purest form, isn't it? She isn't rowing, she isn't steering with a motor, she's just flowing, drifting, accepting the current.
She drifts for 3 whole days. It's a complete suspension of productive time. She is literally, physically going with the flow.
And where does she end up?
On a beach. A beautiful tropical island. The very place she used to read about in her magazines.
And here is the million-dollar question. Does she break out of the kiosk? Does she shed the weight of the box? Does she emerge from her chrysalis like a butterfly?
No. And that's the genius of it. She keeps the kiosk. She pushes it up onto the sand. She opens the window and starts selling ice cream to tourists.
She brought her home with her. The problem was never the home.
She is still fat. She is still in the box. But the context is completely changed. The box is no longer a trap. It's a beach bar. The fat body is no longer an obstruction on a busy sidewalk. It's a centerpiece of leisure and happiness.
I love the detail the authors point out about the snacks, the politics of snacks.
Oh, this is so crucial. At the start of the book, we see her eating sweets and snacks in her kiosk. Usually in fiction, if a fat character eats, it's framed as shameful. It's the reason for their misery. The camera or the illustration will zoom in on the mouth, making it look gross or gluttonous.
But here,
At the very end of the book, on the beach, the last illustration is of her happily eating an ice cream cone. She starts happy with a snack. She ends happy with a snack. The narrative refuses to punish her appetite. The authors call it a circular composition. She eats, she travels, she eats. There's no moral lesson about diet.
and her dress, the polka dots. We have to talk about the dots.
The visual code again? So clever. Olga wears this bright green dress with big pink polka dots. The expert analysis in the article contrasts the sharp, rigid square of the kiosk with the playful round dots.
What do the dots mean? What's
Yep.
the symbolism?
Well, a square has lines at the point somewhere. It has corners. It defines limits. A dot just is. It spins. It's infinite. The authors argue that dots represent queer temporality. They suggest that Olga's inner energy was always vibrant and spinning and infinite, even when she was physically stuck in the square world.
So the square was the world that was forced upon her, but the dots were who she really was all along.
Precisely. And in the end, she doesn't destroy the square. She moves the square into a world that fits the dots. She brings the kiosk to the beach, where the horizon is infinite and round, just like her polka dots.
So let's bring it all together. We have Pinocchio, whose nose creates a glitch in the very logic of the universe. And we have Rosabelle and Olga, whose bodies create a glitch in the timeline of society.
It's a really powerful and unexpected connection.
Let's try to synthesize this. What are the big overarching themes that connect our wooden puppet and our fat pony?
I think the first theme, the most obvious one, is clearly the body as a rule breaker.
Right. In all three of these cases, the body refuses to comply with the established system.
Pinocchio's body refuses to obey the law of non-contradiction.
Right.
It literally creates a state that logic says shouldn't and cannot exist. Rosabelle and Olga, their bodies refuse to obey chrononormativity. They refuse to speed up. They refuse to shrink. They refuse to be productive in the way the world demands. They are all, in their own way, bodies that say no.
Okay, that's a strong one. Theme number 2, truth versus perception.
This is interesting because they handle it in almost opposite ways. For Pinocchio, the truth is a shackle. It's an external force. The blue fairy imposes the truth on his body. His nose betrays him. He tries to hide the truth, and his own body screams it out for everyone to see.
He is a victim of an absolute externally enforced truth.
But for Rosabelle and Olga, the truth is a weapon of liberation. Rosabelle says, I am fat. She reclaims the truth from her mother's euphemisms. Olga realizes the truth is that she is a traveler, not a prisoner. They get to define their own truth, whereas Pinocchio is defined by his.
That's a fascinating distinction. The wooden boy struggles to hide the truth. The flesh and blood bodies struggle to have their truth recognized by others.
And finally, I think theme number 3 is all about possibility spaces.
We talked about Eldridge Smith arguing that Pinocchio's world is metaphysically impossible. It's a world that shouldn't be.
Right. Logic says Pinocchio is a glitch that crashes the system, he's a dead end. But the analyzed authors argue that Rosabelle and Olga create queer utopias. They create worlds that are possible, but only if we are willing to change the rules of time and space.
So Pinocchio's paradox shuts the world down. It stops the nose from growing. It breaks the bridge. Rosabelle and Olga's paradox opens the world up. It creates a new life on the beach or a new friendship outside the fence.
Pinocchio is a fatal error message. Olga is a software update that unlocks new features.
So what does this all mean for you, for the listener? Why should you care about a logician's daughter and a fat pony?
I think it challenges us to look at the paradoxes in our own lives. We all live with these rigid, often unspoken rules. I must be productive. I must be thin. I must be logical and rational. I must have a 5-year plan. We police ourselves with these chrononormative rules constantly.
But these stories, in their very different ways, remind us that those rules are actually quite fragile. A single sentence from an 11-year-old can break 2,000 years of logic. A single daydream from a kiosk worker can break the timeline of an entire city.
It encourages you to think critically about the media you consume. The next time you see a monster or a puppet or a fat character in a movie or a book, ask yourself, what rules is this body testing? What anxieties is this character carrying for the rest of us?
Are you looking at a headless fatty, an object meant to be pitied or fixed? Or are you looking at a rocket of sparks, a subject with their own logic and their own time?
Exactly. It changes how you look at the monsters or the outcasts in stories. They aren't just there to be defeated or fixed. They might actually be there to show us that the system itself is what's broken.
As we wrap up here, let's just recap the big takeaways from this deep dive.
Takeaway 1. The Pinocchio paradox proves that even the simplest sentences can break the universe if they are self-referential. Logic isn't as bulletproof as we like to think it is.
Takeaway 2. The concept of fat temporality proves that bodies aren't just passive objects in space. They actively affect how we experience time. Simply existing can be an act of rebellion against a world that wants you to hurry up.
And takeaway 3. Picture books are doing incredibly complex political work. They can be Trojan horses, pun absolutely intended for radical ideas about identity, truth, and existence, all hidden inside a bedtime story.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about Pinocchio's nose growing when he lies. But consider this. The rules of Pinocchio's nose were set by the Blue Fairy. She is an authority figure. She represents the adult world, the rule maker.
She is the enforcer. She's the Plato on the bridge, deciding who gets across.
Right. So here is the provocation. If Pinocchio looked the Blue Fairy in the eye and said, "My nose grows only when I am being systematically marginalized," what would happen?
Wow, that is a dangerous question to ask a magical being.
Would the magic understand sociological concepts? Or does the magic only understand simple binary facts like, did you steal the pie?
If the magic is based on the intent to deceive, and Pinocchio truly feels marginalized, then he's telling his truth, and the nose might not grow. But if the Blue Fairy, the authority, disagrees with his assessment,
Then we have a conflict between personal truth and authoritative truth. A paradox of power.
and that is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? Who gets to own the definition of truth? The puppet or the fairy who pulls the strings?
It connects back to our sources so perfectly. Veronique Eldridge Smith, the 11-year-old, used play to dismantle her father's serious logic. And the authors of these picture books use play with color and shape and time to dismantle the rigid structures of the body.
Perhaps the ultimate lesson here is that play is the only thing stronger than truth, the only thing that can break the rules and create something new.
I think that's a very safe bet. Next time you read a bedtime story, or even just tell a little white lie, look for the hidden logic. You might find a paradox waiting to happen.
Or a pony waiting to break a fence.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.